Okay, hello, welcome to the Craft Shed Crystal Glaze workshop video. Now I'm going to be brutally honest with you all. I am not technically minded, so with regards to this video, it is going to be a very raw video. I don't have editing skills or anything like that yet. I'm hoping to increase my skills on this in this kind of arena, but for now this video is literally what you see is what you get, so there is no editing in this. So if there's any mistakes made, I will let you know along the way, and you can either have a good laugh or learn from my mistakes. Okay, so thank you very much for wanting to take part in the Crystal Glaze workshop. This is the first video that we've done online and for Zoom, so for anyone that's joining us on the Zoom, you can either unable to join us on the Zoom, then obviously you can watch it back on this video. There are also written instructions. I'll go through what's inside the box in a sec. So kind of where I'm working is on my work table, so if you're at a dining room table or something that needs a little bit of protection, feel free to kind of lay kitchen paper down or a newspaper or paper, anything to kind of protect your table. I'm not bothering because this is my work table anyway. The paint does come off with a wipe or, you know, a cloth, so don't worry about that too much. It is fine. Okay, so let's go through what's inside your box. So here we go, let's open it up. So you will get like written instructions, so obviously if you don't want to listen to my dulcet tones, that's absolutely understandable. So you will get the written instructions as well to kind of follow. I'm going to put the instructions to one side, and here is the contents of the box. Okay, so inside you have the faceted vase that we're going to be working on. You have some chocolate goodies to keep you going if you need them. Your fan brush, this is a very important piece of kit, so we need to look after this. I'm going to use my own working brush, so please ignore that it looks slightly different, but there is no difference in it, in the fact that it's the same sort of principle. It's a fan brush, it's just my working one. So, but these are really important to look after. It says it in instructions, so don't leave them kind of hanging around in water. As you can feel, the bristles on the brush are quite fine and soft, so yeah, this is a good piece of kit, this. You've got your other pottery piece, so we've got your leaf trinket dish that we're going to be decorating as well. So we've got your chosen paint, so this is the underglaze that we're going to be using. This is quite watery, so the tubs I've given, so for those that have picked the pink colour, it will be a lot thicker. For whatever reason, this is quite thin, so I may not add any water to this as we go along, but we shall see. Just to kind of show you what's going on, I probably will. So for those that have picked the pink, this is what your kind of paint pots will look like. Those that pick the green, you'll kind of have the two tubs looking like this kind of shape. There's no difference in them, it's just kind of different glazes that you can use, and if we going forward doing more workshop with crystal glazes, we can talk about sort of different glazes to put together and things like that, and cascades, sort of making it move, but that's for another class. If this is quite popular, we'll do that another time. Okay, so this is the pink kit that I'm going to be using today and showing you. So you've got your underglaze, and this is the crystal glaze pot, and as you can see from the bottom, all these lovely crystals are at the bottom, which we will talk about as the workshop goes on. So let's put that to one side. So again, you've got some more sweeties to kind of keep you going, so feel free to graze on in or throw them at the kids if they're coming in and bugging you and you need to get rid of them. You've got a sponge in your kit, and you've also got the two bowls to use with your paints and water and stuff, so you don't have to go hunting for a water pot or anything like that. Okay, so that's the contents of your kit. I'm just going to get rid of the box to one side. So what you will need to do with one of your bowls is to fill it up with water, as this will be your water pot. So if you want to go away and get some water, I'll kind of pause. I've got a bowl next to me that's already got some water in it, so I don't need to worry too much. So whilst you go off and get some water in your pots, I'm just going to get my water pot ready. Also, the other thing that isn't included in your kit that I will be using is some tissue paper. So if you want to get some sort of kitchen roll or toilet roll, as you will need some of this as we go on through the workshop. Okay, so if you want to go and get your water pots filled, if they aren't already filled, I'm going to pause for 2 seconds so people that need to go and get them can. Right, here's my water pot. There we go. If you want to pause the video, because I'll get going again in a minute. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do, let me put that nice clean one to one side. Where's my other pots? Okay. Oops. Okay, so these in shot. Yep. Okay. So the first thing we are going to be doing is we're going to take our sponge and we're going to dip it in the water and we're going to give it a good squeeze out, because you don't want it to be completely sodden. So it's literally just wet to the touch. It's not kind of, there's not loads dripping out of it anymore, but it's still wet to the touch, because what we're going to do is we are going to clean both of our pottery pieces off from any sort of dust that it may have picked up in transit. Feel free to get some more water on your sponge. Just remember to kind of rinse it out nicely so it doesn't completely saturate the pottery piece. So I'm just going to give that a nice clean up to get rid of any dust that may be on the pottery piece, because dust can interfere with the paints you then apply and the glazing process. Albeit we're not going to be glazing these items, and I shall explain that as we go on. So once you've done the leaf, you can then move on to your bud vase. So I'm just going to give this a nice clean to make sure that there's no dust on it. Give it a good clean all the way around. Apologies if I go off camera. I shall be mindful of that. I'll try to be mindful of that so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. So there we go. Give it a nice good old clean. So with regards to the inside, if you just want to kind of wipe the inside with the damp sponge to get rid of any dust at the top. And then with regards to like kind of right at the bottom, obviously we're not going to be able to get our sponges right in there. So what you can do is give it a good blow inside to get rid of any dust. So that should give that a nice clean. Okay, so once you're happy that there's no kind of dust or anything on the pottery piece, you can then set your sponge to one side. Okay, make sure I'm going to follow the instructions as we go through to make sure I'm doing it correctly as well. As I've followed this as a workshop myself, I've not actually delivered it. So you are the first people to be receiving this video. How cool is that? Okay, so what you now need to do is, so we're going to take the empty pot. For those with using the pink kit, you want to take this bottle here. For those that are using the green kit, you want the pot that says the element glaze on it, so not the crystal glaze. You want to kind of set your crystal glaze pot to one side, so you're using the, in fact I've got the other one here. So those using the green kit, these are your two pots here. So you want to take the sea green pot and set your crystal glaze pot to one side. So this is the one that you're going to be working with for those using the green one. So it's the sea green elements glaze. And for the pink one, it's the stroke and cut. It's going to be in a plain bottle, but it's the bottle that looks like this. You will definitely recognise the difference between these two pots. And what we're going to do with our pots of paint is literally give them a good old shake. So good shake up. And once they've had a good shake, we are then going to pour. So you can take the whole cap off for this, or you can pour it through like the little the little spouty bit. It's up to you. So I'm going to take the whole lid off, and we're going to pour about 3/4 of the pot into your bowl, and we're going to set that to one side. So you've got 3/4 of the underglaze in your pot, and using, again, if you want to use your water tub, that's absolutely fine. If you want to get a little glass to kind of control how much you put in it, that's absolutely fine, because literally we're going to be pouring a small amount of water into your underglaze. So it does literally, it's not a huge amount. It's literally a matter of like kind of like a few drops really, because what we're going to be doing is we're thinning down the underglaze. Now with your fan brush, kind of give it a little tickle, fan out the bristles to make sure they're all okay, and then we're going to mix up the paint in the bowl so it's nice. So what we're doing is we're thinning the underglaze or the paint down so it's a little bit thinner than what it came out the pot as, okay? And then what you want to do is just kind of get the excess paint off your brush. You can kind of set it across your to one side, or I'm putting mine across the water pot just to kind of keep it safe. So, and then what we're going to do is with the paint that's in your bowl, we are going to tip the entire bowl of paint into your bud vase. Okay, so tip the whole bowl into your bud vase. Now what we are going to do now is we are going to do something called roll glazing. Okay, so we are going to, I'm just going to make sure what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the empty bowl that had your paint in and kind of set it underneath, because what we're doing now is we're roll glazing the inside of your vase. So literally, as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm just literally rolling the vase around in my hand, and I'm also tilting it as I'm rolling it, because what I'm doing is I'm roll glazing the entire inside of the let me move this over so it just catches it, the entire inside of the vase, because what this is doing is it's completely sealing the inside of the vase with the paint that we thinned down and poured inside, and this then makes it completely water safe to use as a functional vase. It also, again, I'll kind of talk a bit more about the crystal glaze as we go on, but it also acts as a layer inside to kind of almost protect the vase when we apply the crystal glaze, and we'll come on to that shortly. So what you're doing is you're just continuing to roll glaze and tilt the vase as you go, and what will start happening is you will see, you might, if you're sitting down, you might want to stand up for this bit. I'm going to stand up just so I can get a bit of a better angle on it and hopefully try and keep you in shot. So you'll start seeing the paint edging its way to the top of the vase. That's absolutely fine. Just do this slowly but surely. There's no kind of rush to this. I'm just trying to find my paint now. Okay, so you want to kind of get the paint to start going around the top of the inside of the vase as well. So we're capturing. Now with any drips that come round the top of the rim of the vase, please do not worry about that. We will tidy them up as we go. Now with mine, because the paint was so thin, I don't know if you can see that very well, so I'm going to try and capture the light. So as you can see, mine has not grabbed the top of the vase the way I want it, so it needs to be completely covered in paint. So if you've kind of got those drip marks, we can't have them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the paint back in, the remainder of the paint, and I'm just going to kind of tilt it quickly to try and capture or cover the entire top of the vase. It might be that I need to add some more paint too, so I'm going to pour. This is because this paint in this my pot is very thin at the moment, so I'm not going to add any more water because it's already very thin. So I'm just going to add a bit more to kind of cover, make sure I cover the top of the vase, because it all needs to be covered nicely. I'm just going to speed it up a bit as well. Here we go. That's better. So if you've already finished roll glazing the inside of your vase and you're now at the top, just bear with me. I just need to, my paint is really thin, so I'm not capturing everything. I need to make sure I'm covering the entire top of the lip of my vase. The neck of it. The neck of my vase needs to be completely covered. So just bear, so if you have finished roll glazing, literally what you're going to be doing is going to shake the kind of excess paint out of the vase, because the reason why we're doing this is because if we kind of finish roll glazing and then tipped it right up, you'll then start having drips going down inside the vase, which will then leave like drip marks. And your finished item, like your finished vase, will have like drip marks on the inside that you'll see once it's all standing. So no drip marks, just give it a good shake. Good shake up. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to capture, using my fan brush, I'm just going to capture the bits that have missed so that it's completely covered. Again, if you want to capture or catch any drip marks, then you could use your brush as I've just done. I'm just going to make sure there's no drips going. Okay, now I've made a mess on the table, so I'm just going to wipe up the kind of drip marks with my sponge. Just get rid of them. That's fine. So there we go. So as you can see, hopefully you can see that, I've got like a big drip mark going down the side. There's a couple of drip marks down the side. So to kind of get rid of them, you can take a piece of tissue and literally just not completely soak it, so just wet it with a bit of water, and you can wipe, or even with the sponge. In fact, use the sponge. Let's use the sponge to kind of wipe away those drip marks from the outside. That's better. So then you can kind of tidy up the top of your vase if there's any like major drips coming through. So whilst I've kind of had it flat, there might be some drip marks going back down into the vase. So again, just be a bit patient with it, keep shaking it to get the drips out. And then what you could do is, with another bit of tissue, is then place your vase upside down onto the tissue. And that just kind of allows any kind of remaining drips of paint to kind of come out and fall onto the tissue rather than back down your vase and leave a bit of a drip mark. So, okay, we'll leave that there for a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the rest of the paint, so the underglaze that you have in your pot, I'm going to pour the rest of that into my bowl with the paint in it. And I'm going to use my fan brush and just give it a bit of a mix up again. Give it a bit of a mix. Oops, spraying this everywhere now, so it's good to have your sponge. So if you want to kind of keep your area tidy as you work, you can use your sort of moistened sponge to wipe down the your working area. Okay, so My hand's a bit alright. So just keep checking the top of your vase to make sure there's no drips. Like as you kind of as you kind of tilt your vase back up, you'll be able to see if there's the paint dripping down into the vase. So again, if you just want to kind of set it down on your tissue and just leave it a little bit longer, that's fine. You will get some drip back, but kind of the longer you leave gravity to take hold and pull the drips down towards your tissue as opposed to the other way, then the better, or the sort of cleaner top, or just inside the top of your vase will look. Okay, so once they've kind of stopped dripping, you can then move your tissue to one side. Now what we're going to do now is we are going to base coat your vase. So we are going to then, I'm just going to put this to the other side because I'm right-handed. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our fan brush again, and we're literally just going to base coat our bud vase. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video there. Or can I? No, I can't. Right, so you're going to have to kind of bear with. Put the radio on if I'm just going to stop the recording otherwise. So I can't pause it. This is why I need to be a bit more technically minded when it comes to videos and classes online and stuff like that. So yep, so go ahead and base coat your vase all over. What we're going to do is we're going to give it 2 base coats. It's really important to get all of the vase covered with 2 good base coats. So I'll kind of explain this. I'm conscious that I'm constantly talking. So there we go. There we go, and get into all the crevices. Down a bit. I might need to go and grab some more paint. Because you need to, whilst we are doing 2 coats on the vase, we also need to be doing 2 coats when we come to it onto your leaf dish as well. So just need to be mindful that we've got enough paint to cover that as well. I'm just going to add a bit of water to mine just to kind of thin it down a bit. There we go. Okay, so once you've done 1 base coat on your vase, we're going to let that sort of dry. We need to let it dry between coats. So kind of once it's sort of, when I've done classes or taken part in classes, obviously this is the first class I'm teaching. So when I've taken part in classes, the way they kind of describe it is once the gleam or the shininess starts going from the paint, that is a good indication that your first coat is dry, and then you can go straight ahead and start applying the second coat. The first coat that goes onto your pottery will always dry quite quickly because the pottery or the bisque is porous, so the first layer of paint will always be absorbed quite quickly into the pottery, so the first layer will always dry very quickly. So when it comes to doing the second coat, you can kind of, as you're working round, you'll see that it's starting to dry quite quickly, so you can pretty much go straight into your second coat, and then it's the second coat that takes a little bit longer to dry. So yep, so if you want to go ahead and start putting your second coat on, I'm just going to go and grab some more paint. here, because this, for whatever reason, this paint is not very good. Yours will be a lot thicker. So I'm just going to go on and start applying my second coat. Now, the reason why we are making sure there's lots of coverage with your underglaze onto your pottery piece, or pottery pieces, is because the crystal glaze, so the crystal elements to it is called frit. Now, when I first heard this word, I was like, what the hell does frit mean? So, of course, you look things up to kind of educate yourselves. And frit basically means kind of little bits of glass. So we are effectively applying little bits of glass that are in the paint to your item. Now, what happens is, oh god, I'm going to get really messy here. What happens is when you apply the crystal glaze, and you'll kind of see the texture and the consistency as it goes on. Once it goes through the kiln, the crystal glaze will move, which is why we don't completely cover your pottery piece. So when we apply the crystal glaze, we are only going to go down as far as like this bottom bit here, because there is potential for drippage, is probably the best way I can describe it, or movement. So the crystals could actually, depending on how thick you put it on, could mean that the crystals move down to this area here. So if we painted right down to the bottom here, it could go under and kind of form a load of gloopiness underneath your pottery piece, and we want it to look as beautiful as it can be. So because of the movement of the crystal glaze through the firing process, we need to be kind of mindful of where we apply it, because it will move around. Okay, so I think I've just about got my second coat on. Hopefully you've got your second coat on. So we're just going to let the second coat dry, and as you can see, this coat takes a little bit longer to dry than your first coat going on, because it's now, the second coat is now sitting on a layer of paint. So there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to set my my vase down. Now, whilst we wait for the second coat to dry, what we can do is we can start prepping our leaf trinket dish as well. So whilst the bud vase is waiting to dry, we can start sort of prepping our leaf trinket. So what we're going to do is, if you need some more paint, just pour the paint that you've got left in your tub into the bowl. And like with the bud vase, we are going to do 2 layers of the underglaze onto your leaf trinket dish. If you kind of find that you've started to run low on the underglaze paint, please do not worry. You can just, not load, but add a bit of water to the underglaze as well. So I'm just gonna, now with the leaf trinket dish, we need to make sure that we get into all the little crevices on top of it, like the sort of the veins of the leaf that are on there, but we also need to paint underneath. Okay, so you definitely need to paint both sides, because again, as I said, the crystal glaze, once it's applied to the pottery piece and goes through the kiln process, the crystal glaze will expand and start stretching across the pottery, and this is like where I've said about the movement on it. So if you applied crystal glaze to just your plain pottery or your plain bisque like this, because it's going to move on the pottery, it could potentially crack the plain bisque, which is why you need a base coat on your pottery pieces to stop any kind of cracks happening or breakages once it starts going through the kilning process. So that's another reason why you need to make sure you have a good enough coverage on your pottery pieces with your underglaze to sort of stop that from happening. When I did, I'm just going to set that to one side so it can dry a bit. Clean my hands up a bit because they're complete. I'm a very messy worker if you haven't kind of gathered already. So yes, when I did a sort of a practice demonstration with some girlfriends, I don't think one of them base coated the vase very well because I think it was a combination of factors. I don't think that there was enough base coat on the pottery item, and she went very heavy with the crystal glaze. So, you know, basically the more crystal glaze you have on there, the more kind of movement and pulling it will have on the pottery piece. And then if there's not enough paint as your base coat, then that's going to have an effect as well. So those two kind of things combined will impact the finished product effectively. So I'm just going to go ahead and start doing a second coat on my leaf, because hopefully whilst we've been doing this, your vase has been able to dry, and then it will come to the fun part with the crystal glaze application. Okay, right, I think I've got everything covered on that. So with what I've just said in mind, if you're kind of, you know, worried about the pottery cracking or anything, providing you've got enough paint left, that it's going to do no harm in giving your pottery pieces another coat of the base of your base colours, to kind of protect the pottery as much as possible through the firing process with your crystal glaze on it. Okay, so we have prepped now our pottery pieces ready for the crystal glaze to go on. So what you now need to do is you now need to wash your bowl that had the paint in it, and you need to wash your fan brush out so that they are completely clean. So I'm just going to do that because I haven't got spare ones. Okay, so I'm very conscious of kind of these pauses. I'm sorry that I can't pause the video. Right, so with your tub, obviously just give it a bit of a dry out with some tissue. And then with your fan brush, just kind of get any excess. I'm just going to use my water bowl if there is any excess. Just kind of get any excess, use your fingers between the bristles to kind of get any excess water out. Just kind of push it between your fingers to kind of get any excess water out. Give it a little brush on your hand. It doesn't have to be completely dry, but it just needs to be, get as much water off as you can. because these fan brushes are very important. Okay, so we are now to the fun part with the crystal glaze. So right at the start I showed that, as you can see, a lot of this is all the crystals at the bottom of your tub, which is why a good shake is very important. So we're going to give your crystal glazes, your crystal glaze tub, a really good shake. So obviously just, well, hopefully you'll be able to, there's only 2 tubs in your box, but it is the one that says crystal glaze on it. So whichever colour you've chosen, so that's the pink one. And then, but both tubs will have crystal glaze, jungle gems, crystal glaze on your tub. So give it a good old shake. Okay, now once you've given it a good shake, you're going to carefully take the lid off. Set that to one side, and then we're going to pour the entire contents of your crystal glaze tub out into your bowl. Now, don't know, so as you can see, there's still lots of crystals at the bottom of your tub. I don't know if you can, the light's capturing that very well, but there's lots of crystals still at the bottom of your tub. Now very carefully, if you've got I should put another brush in, but never mind. So if very carefully with your fan brush, you can kind of scoop the crystals that are at the bottom of the tub and just pour them into your bowl so you capture as much as possible. There we go. Get a good scoop out. Okay, and look, as you can see, there's lots of lovely crystals on my fan brush already. So we're going to put your empty tub to one side, and we're going to give this a nice stir. So the crystals will sink right to the bottom of your bowl. So there'll still be some on top of the surface, but most of the juicy crystals will go down to the bowl, which is why you kind of have to dig deep. Now, be mindful of the fact, so I'm just going to kind of not saturate my fan brush, so just kind of pull it onto the side to kind of keep it not completely saturated with your paint whilst I talk about this. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to apply the crystal glaze. I mean, it's completely up to you. If you want to kind of leave the neck of your vase plain, that's absolutely fine. But ultimately, we are only going to come down to this sort of like bottom part of the shape here, where I'm not going to put any crystal glaze on the pentagons at the bottom of the vase, because of what I said earlier. The movement and the crystal glaze could move during the firing process down here. So you will, you know, there's kind of no science to it really. So there's like no control over movement, unfortunately. But if you want to sort of kind of try and keep these lines crisp, then I would only put a sort of thin layer or a thinner layer of crystal glaze at the bottom, and that should kind of help with preventing movement down here if you didn't want drippage or that drip look. But I mean, it does look really funky. I haven't got my vases here to kind of show you. So I am going to apply crystal glaze to the neck and this sort of the bulk part of the vase. Now what you want to do is, now I'm not scooping right down to the bottom of the bowl, because ultimately the materials that you've been given are yours to keep. So if you would like to kind of do a whole set of pottery pieces with this crystal glaze that you have left over, if you then scoop right down to the bottom and literally cover your pottery pieces with the crystal glaze, you won't have a lot of the crystals left over for future pottery pieces. So, but again, it is choice. So if you're happy to kind of do that, then that's absolutely fine. Just be mindful that any future pieces may have less crystals going onto them if you've used, like if you've scooped down during this project or these projects to get a load of crystals on your pieces. So with the crystal glaze, we're going to load up your brush. So kind of, this is when you can kind of saturate your brush so that it's fully loaded on both sides. Now there's lots of crystals already on there. Now, unlike when you painted your pottery, like the vase and the leaf, you did that nice kind of sort of brushing motion. If you were to do that now, you're going to be moving the crystals around constantly. So the best way to do this now, once you've loaded your brush, is to almost like dab on the paint and the crystal glazes rather than kind of stroke it on, because you can do that if you want to kind of move the crystals around. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, but you know, if you kind of want this area to stay as it is with those crystals there, by kind of pulling it, it's going to move some to this side, or if I did it that way, it's going to move it to that side. So to kind of keep them in one area, the best way to do it is to just dab the crystal glaze on onto the pottery piece. Now I'm putting mine on quite thick. So you can put it on quite thick to begin with if you don't want to kind of do another layer, but then just be mindful, if I'm putting it on quite thick, there's been, like, as I've turned the vase round, there's been quite a lot of movement and drippage going on as I've moved the vase around. So it's probably better to start with a thinner layer first, and then you can kind of build on it as you work. So I'm literally just gonna dab on there. This is where you might get a little bit messy as you start moving down the vase. So I'm just gonna, oh, hopefully that's still in shot. There we go. Kind of, and obviously loading your brush up both sides, you can sort of flip it between sides, so you kind of not constantly dipping in and out. There we go. I'm just gonna hold mine up a little bit so I can focus on where I'm going. It might be that you could, because hopefully the inside of your vase is dry, that you can then poke your fingers into the neck of your vase and kind of hold it that way. Just be mindful of like it falling off your fingers though. So if you're confident to do that, then go ahead. If not, go ahead and get a load of paint on your fingers, it's not a problem. So I'm just tapping it as I go around, flipping my brush over to kind of get the crystals that might have kind of been pushed through the brush on both sides. Oops. There we go. Okay, so again, the first layer of the crystal glaze that goes on will take a little while to dry because you've already base coated your pottery piece with your underglaze, so it's going to take a little while for this first coat of crystal glaze to dry. Okay. So as you can see, I've kind of accidentally come down onto my pentagons, which is fine. I'm happy with that look, to see how it comes out. If you didn't want that on there, just literally with a wet bit of tissue you could wipe. Again, I would just sort of dab and gently kind of rub off the crystal glaze where you don't want it. But if you end up taking off too much, you may need to kind of just top up this bottom piece with the underglaze that you used. So you can do that at the end. Don't kind of combine the two processes. So just wipe where you want it to come off, let it dry, and once you've finished putting on your crystal glaze and you've cleaned out your pots and stuff, you can then apply, go over this area that I've just taken some off with the underglaze again. So now I am quite happy with the coverage of the crystal glaze. So you want a kind of even layer of crystals all out, like just to kind of get that nice pattern. So I'm really happy with the amount of crystals that are on each side of my vase. Now, if you're not happy or you'd like to apply, for instance, if I wanted a bit more kind of crystal, like the crystals up here, I would literally just kind of get a bit on the brush and then top up that area, trying to capture like the crystals that are on your brush. And again, I'm just doing it gently so I'm not moving it around too much. Or you can kind of pull some of the crystals off of, like, if there's an area that's quite heavy in them, you can then try and transfer them onto the area that you'd like a bit more on. Again, it's kind of a preference of how you want it to look. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the coverage on that. I'm not going to give mine a second coat. If you'd like to do like a second coat, obviously you can. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the crystal glaze on my leaf trinket dish now. So again, I'm just going to load my brush up, kind of give it a bit of a wipe off so I can now see the crystals on my brush. And again, I'm just going to dab on. I'm not going to sort of use it as a normal paintbrush, because you're just kind of, as I move the brush, I'm literally taking I would be taking the crystals here and just moving them to this side of the trinket dish. So that's why it's better to just kind of dab on rather than brush it on, so that you're not having a concentrated area of the crystals on one side effectively, really. So there we go. So I want to cover the entire top of my leaf trinket. I'm not going to do the bottom of it, one, because I want to save my crystals, because you're not going to be able to see the bottom of it. So that's why I'm not going to do the bottom. Some people, if you want to kind of have a concentrated area, you don't feel that you've got to cover the whole leaf with the crystal glaze. So if you just want to do like a little central bit, that's absolutely fine. Again, it's this complete preference to how you'd like it to look. So I think I'm just going to try and grab some of the crystals around the side of my bowl, really, rather than scoop right down. There we go. Right, I think I'm pretty happy with the coverage of that. Okay, there we go. So once you're happy with the coverage on your pieces, all you need to do now is literally just set them to dry. So if you've got little people in your house, or you've got people who are inquisitive as to what it is that you've just done, I would try to hide these pieces from them so that they don't grab the piece and kind of start messing up with your crystal, like the positioning of your crystals. So just keep them sort of safe to one side, out of reach for inquisitive people, big or little, and just let them dry. Now, what the next important thing that doesn't make sense, important thing to do is to, I'm just going to set that to one side really, is to clean, make sure all of your materials are clean. So with the leftover crystal glaze, again, this is yours to keep, so you can get more pottery to play around with it on. So we're just going to pour it back into your tub and keep it safe. So I'm just going to scoop it in using my brush, give that a good scoop. You're not going to capture all of the crystals out of your tub. You can try. If you do, let me know. So I'm just going to scoop as much as I can into the tub. There we go. So I'm just going to make sure I get most of that off my brush as well. Try and get as many crystals back in. So as you can see, I've been left with quite a few crystals at the bottom. Unfortunately, that's life. You're going to lose some along the way. So what I would then do now is just give your fan brush a really good clean with warm water, and obviously wash your bowls out, and you're good to go for another time. So there we go. Now with the crystal glaze tub, the best way, or I say the best way, the suggested way to store it is to, well, make sure your lid is on nice and tight and secure. And the best way you can kind of secure your tub or keep the crystals from gathering at the bottom is upside down. So you could keep it upside down. You can keep it that way, it's not going to make a huge difference, but if you kind of want to keep the crystals from sinking again, you can keep it upside down. Okay, and that is the, let me move these back into shot, give my desk a little bit of a clean up, and that is your crystal glaze workshop. So now I can see that these are drying already. Now once your pottery pieces have dried, I've just taken a chunk out, oh that's not good. So once your pottery pieces are dry, please be very careful with them. The reason I say this is because it's all quite wet and sort of, you know, almost smooth. I know there's lumps from the crystals on it, but once this completely dries, the crystals will be quite sort of not sharp to touch, but they could potentially be a little bit sharp to touch. So be mindful of how you're handling your pottery piece. And also the crystals can fall off if you're kind of manhandling it a bit. So you don't want the crystals to fall off, because obviously you want them to pop in the kiln and make all the lovely patterns on your pieces. So when it comes to wrapping your items up for us to come back and pick up, if it was the vase, I'd kind of pick it up from the inside and kind of tilt it from the bottom, and then try and wrap, not tightly, just wrap some kitchen roll or tissue around the vase very loosely to kind of protect the layer of the crystals on there from kind of being knocked off. And with the trinket dish, I would kind of, yep, again, sort of you could have the kitchen roll underneath and then wrap it over just loosely, and either pop it in a bag or the box that your kit came in, or but you can keep the box to keep your materials in. It's completely up to you. We will have a box to transport in when we come back and collect it from you. But yeah, we just need to kind of be careful on how we sort of move or handle the items, because you don't want to knock the crystals off. We want as many crystals as possible on there to keep these beautiful patterns. So that is basically the crystal glazing and sort of the first stage of it. I'm hoping, if this is successful and you've really enjoyed it, to do more crystal glaze workshops where we can talk about other mediums that you can use, other colour combinations and stuff like that, and continue your love of crystal, or like learning with crystal glazes and other element paints and stuff like that. So there we go, just be just a little reminder of making sure your materials are clean. When storing like the paints and stuff, just keep them away from heat or direct sunlight, because they that will affect the consistency of your of the paints that you have left. Don't forget to give them a good shake before opening and using. And yeah, just make sure, I need to give my fan brush a really good clean, and with the fan brush, make sure you clean it. Just remember to get any excess water out of the bristles to preserve your fan brush, because that's a really good bit of kit. Don't leave, if you continue to use your fan brush for other projects, don't leave it in like tubs of water so it's drinking it. It doesn't like that. And yeah, okay, that's it. If you've got any questions with regards to the video or what we've done, or you need me to repeat anything and don't want to watch the video again, please drop us a message on the Facebook page. Let us know how you found it, if you like it, and if you'd like to see more. Thank you. Bye.